There are times in our lives that we feel lost in the path we are walking. Keep your eyes on the Lord, and He will show you the way. Performing at the age of 11, Joy Canyon, country music singer, songwriter, performer, actor, and founder of Canyon Star TV Network, has graced the stage with his songs and his video compilations alongside the likes of Hank Williams Jr., George Strait, Lorrie Morgan, Alan Jackson, Travis Tritt, and Reba McEntire. But there was a time in his life that he felt lost with no direction. And one day, he made a decision that changed his life. This is his story. This is today's Nashville. This is Faith. Joy, you are one busy guy.
That's an understatement, Terry.
Well, thank you for inviting me into your home this morning. I am so excited to hear what God is doing in your life. You have been from California to Colorado to Nashville. It's been quite the journey. From acting to country music to a television network. Take me back to where it all started.
Third grade, eight years old, and I was asked to sing for the school. And before that, of course, loved music, listening to the radio back then.
At 8 years old.
At 8 years old, and I really liked it. So I just kept singing, and I always sang to all the songs on the radio at the time, the top 40 back then.
Even at that young of an age?
Oh yeah, I could sing. The other little friends of mine really didn't have that concept, but it just kind of came out of me. So I really enjoyed singing.
Were your parents musical?
They were musical, that they could play a really good record player and a real good radio, but not musically, not instrumental or singing.
Were you always drawn to country, or was it all kinds?
Well, in my early years, the top 40 was the rock and roll of late 50s and then 60s. And then towards the back end of the 60s, when the Buffalo Springfields of the world came around, and the Crosby, Stills and Nash, the country rock type groups, I really liked them. And then my dad was a huge country fan. I mean, he had all the vinyl records and things like that. So when I heard them playing all the time through the house, it subliminally got into my head, and that I just kind of gravitated towards it.
So did you grow up in California? Or?
I grew up in California, in a small town north of LA, about 40 miles, which isn't a small town anymore. At 23, I moved to Colorado. I had a baseball career. That's what I originally wanted to be.
Oh, in Colorado?
No, in California. I was a big baseball pitcher back then, and I wanted to play pro ball. Through the 60s, when I started in Little League, I started the same time playing guitar, learning guitar. And so baseball took precedence, but I always kept up on my singing and things like that. When I injured my rotator cuff, that ended my aspirations for a baseball career. And that's when I moved to Colorado. And I just said, well, then I'm gonna make music my career, my living, what I want to do. So, of course, back then in Colorado in 1976, you start playing for free just to get in front of people. So that's how that started.
So from Colorado, you also got into some acting also.
Well, yeah, I would actually did some modeling and some acting. There were some, in the mid-'80s, they had some TV series from Hollywood, like Perry Mason and Father Dowling, which I worked on. I also did some things for Universal and PBS. I was fortunate to do all of those things.
Did you ever think about acting as a full-time career, or did?
No, acting was just something, that I wanted to do. It wasn't in the forefront. I had a mother that said, like many people out there, had a mother that, or a father that said, you know, you can be anything and do anything you want to do, and I believed them, and so that's what I did. So everything that came along I wanted to do in the entertainment industry. But music was at the forefront. But in the mid-'80s, I wanted to learn about the production business. And so I was fortunate to learn from a very good friend of mine, Sam Allen. And I would work for him behind the camera. He taught me sound and you know, assistant director. I mean, all these positions. And then I started out on my own after that. I learned every position behind the camera.
And this was in Colorado.
I was in Colorado. And I also, you know, through that all, I worked for NFL Films. I was, you know, assistant to Sam, the cameraman, and also a loader. And so I learned a lot about film there. And then in 1990, when music videos were very hot for country music, I produced, directed, scripted, starred in my own music video on 35 millimeter film. Everybody else was doing video, but I knew film. Those days, Terry, of working in music in those days, and then of course production, I look back on it as the Lord educating me to run a network that I have now, and that's how I looked at it. I had to go through all the bumps and grinds and everything, and little did I know He was grooming me for this right now.
Were you a follower of Jesus at this time, or were you?
Well, even as a child, we believed in God, okay, and the Lord and all that. But I was not a devout Christian back then like I am. That came later.
So in your 20s in Colorado, doing all these things, what happened that God opened your eyes to some things?
There was a number of circumstances. I was not immune to a substance abuse problem in 1983. And that was a very tough time. Lost everything, which that's what happens when you do that. I look back at it now, and the Lord saved me from that.
You know, Joey, we're going to talk about it. You know, God, you started wondering both. And God was going to take you down a whole new path.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it right after.
Okay.